Welcome to Dave's Faves of 2019. And today, I was planning to do my top 5 of the year just like I did last year. But you know what? This year's been a bit shit. We had some real dropkicks this year, that's for sure. And apart from that, I personally don't think that there were a whole lot of groundbreaking or really interesting titles this year either. So all in all, I'm a bit fed up with 2019. So instead of that, this year I've only got a top 3 for you. And before I get into that, I'd like to share my most disappointing titles of the year. The top 3 games that felt like a punch in the dick. Number 3. Pokémon Sword and Shield. This game was by no means terrible, but it was just so incredibly lackluster. The premise of Pokémon finally moving to a home console gave us such high hopes, and what we got fell so short of where we wanted it to be. What got everyone so riled up was the missing national decks, and I believe that everyone had a right to be mad about that. Considering they didn't actually update any of the Pokemon models whatsoever, it was simply an arbitrary cut of over half of the Pokemon that exist. Something severely disappointing for longtime fans. Other than that, the game is simply lacking on a technical level. As I said, this is where Pokemon was meant to shift over from being a handheld title, but on all accounts, it's just a handheld game in a higher resolution. Sword and Shield is simply a testament to a game studio being either incompetent, lazy, or both, and really do have me worried for the future of the franchise. Number 2. Imperator Rome. I mean, I don't know what else I was expecting from a Paradox game on launch, but I was still incredibly excited for it. I watched plenty of the dev streams and I loved the Roman history period, so I was pretty hyped for this game. Unfortunately, Daddy Johann did not want to play ball. Imperator's launch was met with widespread distaste, which it deserved. The game was clearly rushed and had so much copy-paste content that it really didn't matter if you played in Gaul or the Far East. The gameplay was basically the same. Despite having some nice mechanics and still being a decent amount of fun, this just simply wasn't up to standard for a Paradox grand strategy, especially compared to their other titles. Granted, you'll need all of their DLC to go along with them. In the end, what we got was an incredibly dull and unpolished launch and a feeling that we could have kept our money and just played an EU4 mod that did it better anyway. Number 1. Cube World. Oh, Cube World, how did it all go so wrong? From pure elation to severe frustration, a game that many of us had so much fun with even in its early alpha stages that just seemed to flip itself on its head and become such a mess. I understand what Wale was going for and I applaud him for trying something different, but it just does not work. The game becomes an endless slog of doing the same thing over and over and over with realistically zero progression whatsoever and no incentive to bring you back. For a game that went dark for 6 years, to come back so suddenly and then be a step backwards was a massive kick in the teeth. I think that's the real reason why Cube World's comeback was such a displeasure. Despite keeping some of the magic of the alpha in its first few hours, Cube World was definitely the most disappointing title of the year. And that wraps up my top 3 biggest letdowns of 2019. And it's exactly that. It's not that I didn't enjoy these games per se, but that they were just so mediocre in comparison to what I expected from them. I'd like to give a special mention to FIFA 20 as well, but I can hardly put that on my list because at this stage, I just rightly assumed that it was going to be shit. Nonetheless, time to move on. My favourite games of the year. Again, not necessarily the games I played the most, but the games that surprised me, charmed me, or I just thought were pretty goddamn neat. And before I get into my top 3 games of the year, I will admit that there were still a few good titles this year, many of which I'm not really invested in. As for my previous 3, they'll be games I actually played and reviewed this year. After all, this is Dave's Faves, not some rigged ass video games awards night. Number 3. Tropico 6. I'd never really played the Tropico games before, but this was a satisfying entry to the series for me. A great mix of strategy and sandbox that really charmed me. Tropico 6 was one of the games I had the most fun with reviewing this year. Everything about this game was just so punchy and fun. The writing, the music, the voice acting, it really did make you feel like the dictator of some ridiculous backwater Caribbean country. Apart from that, it was a great city builder with a good amount of replayability to it as well. It might have lacked a little bit of late game content, but its ridiculous and satirical nature was thoroughly enjoyable, and its surprisingly complex level of strategy was great too. You may not entirely agree with me if you're a long-time Tropico fan, but this game was a fantastic introduction to the series for me, and I certainly look forward to the next installation as well. Number 2. CrossCode. Yeah, this game didn't even come out this year, it came out at the end of last year. But hey, I didn't play it till this year, so it still counts. CrossCode was something else. It's not really my sort of go-to genre of game, but it had me hooked for hours and hours. The writing and characters were interesting, the visuals were retro and awesome, and the gameplay was so tight and addicting, despite almost making me put my fist through my monitor on several occasions. One of the greatest things this game did was make a protagonist we could so easily sympathize with despite them being practically mute. They explored this, rather than just making Leah a silent protagonist, and her expressiveness made her a thoroughly interesting character. Also, probably the closest to a playable whooper protagonist that we'll ever get. I really enjoyed the game's style, and despite being quite a long game even for an RPG, CrossCode was definitely worth the time spent in it. Number 1. MORDHAU. This game was seriously fun. I played a lot of Chivalry Medieval Warfare when it first came out, and MORDHAU was better on every level. Such a brutal, slashy clusterfuck, and so incredibly satisfying when you just killed the shit out of some guy. It's so chaotic, and that's when this game is at its best. I had no control over what was going on for a lot of the time, but I still enjoyed the heck out of it. Some people might try to read into the game more than they need to. Like I said, it's at its best when it's just an absolute mess. It was just a clear improvement on Chivalry as it should have been, and had a great amount of customization that really added to the replay value and fun that you could have with it. Death was common, but kills were so satisfying that I just kept throwing myself back to the front lines. To be honest, I haven't played a hell of a lot of it since my review, but for that time I did play, I enjoyed it immensely. Enough for me to give it number 1 for 2019. So there you have it, both my top 3 most disappointing titles and my 3 most pleasing titles of the year. Do you agree with me, or are you pressing the unsubscribe button right now as we speak? Let me know what you'd put on these lists in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and thanks to everyone who has been supporting my channel in 2019. I've made some good videos and a few shit ones too, but I'm glad my channel isn't completely dead, and I look forward to bringing you all some more content next year too. I didn't really hit my desired targets for this year, but I'm now all the more eager to make 2020 a better year for the channel. I'm always looking to improve my content, both its quality and its quantity, and I hope you'll join me for the ride. So thanks again for watching, and make sure you join me in 2020 for the next installment of Dave's Faves.